Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to walk through how to create a requisition from a hiring manager's perspective, which is a little bit different than from a recruiter's perspective. It's a little bit more pared down. So the way you would access Taleo is either through the partner's icon menu or through PeopleSoft. Today I accessed a little bit differently, which is why I'm not showing that process, because I'm in our staging environment, which you can see because this is a green bar. In production, which is what you'll be utilizing Taleo in, is a blue bar up here. So that's why this looks a little bit different, is I'm in our testing environment to walk you through this process. In Taleo, there is a couple of ways to do things, but this is the initial kind of like recruiting center welcome page that you'll be brought to once you log in. And the easiest way, I guess, would be to just click on the create a requisition right from this home page. And then you're prompted to select a job code and a department. So the job code and the department fuel a lot of the information, and it will automatically pre-populate from the requisition. So I always suggest using these selector windows just to be sure you're selecting your affiliate's job code, because in Taleo, or anything for that matter, so in Taleo you can see all affiliates information. So we'll just sort by job code ID. So if you typed in just the number, you would get all affiliates information. If you sort by your affiliate's three-letter abbreviation, which is prepended to all of the job codes, you'll only see your affiliate's information. So if you knew the full job code, you could enter that in with the underscore and then the number. I, just for testing purposes, will pick this first administrative assistant job code. And then same with the department. So using the selector windows makes it a little bit easier to make sure you're not inadvertently selecting another affiliate's information. And it also helps just kind of connect everything a little bit better using the window, making the selections in here rather than typing it in. So again, if you knew the department number, you could type that in here. I don't know one off the top of my head, so I'll just type in the three-letter abbreviation, and then I'll just make sure from the organization that I am still selecting the correct affiliate information. So I'll pick this department. I'll just hit next. So from here, the organization pre-populates based on the job code you selected. If this organization is incorrect, you cannot use this selector window just to fix it because it's pulling from the job code. So what you would need to do is go to the previous page and select a new job code. Primary location, this pre-populates based on the department you selected. So for the most part, you shouldn't have to change this. However, if this is a role for a department that might be sitting off-site or the department recently changed locations, you do have the ability to update the location here, but typically you shouldn't need to. The job field, again, pre-populates from the job code you selected, so this should typically be all set as well. So from here, we'll just hit create. And you're brought to the requisition tab. So really you're just filling in the information, just systematically going through the process. So the posting title, you can leave this as is, or you can change it. You don't want to change it too drastically from the job code title, so this is what pulls from PeopleSoft. But the posting title you can if you want to highlight new grads apply, or anything else like specific about the shift or the hours or the location, you can add that, but just keep in mind you do want to keep the posting title under 100 characters. And the reason for that is we do have a job aggregator called Broadbean that when you post your jobs to the partner's global career site, so where all affiliates are able to post their jobs, the jobs are automatically scraped and they're sent to a couple of free job board sites, so like Better Jobs, Job Juju, Job Spider, a couple of different boards like that for free. So if your title's over 100 characters, you'll really be missing out on that free advertising because they'll be kicked out from the scrape. So you can change this, but just keep it under 100 characters. Number of openings typically will just be one, but if you are hiring 2 administrative assistants, then you can change this number here. Justification, so you have a drop down here if it's a budgeted replacement, if it's new budgeted, unbudgeted, temporary, per diem, or per visit, or a vacant position reclass. So again, just making this selection based on the specific job. Over here, there is a place for just record keeping purposes, so this is not required. So anything that's required has a red asterisk, but it is nice if an employee is being replaced, you could enter their name or their employee ID number just to keep things straight. Position justification comment. So the way I'll go through creating a requisition is pretty generic, so you do want to check with your affiliate on some of the fields I specifically call out and just in general their specific process, just because each affiliate has their own slightly different nuances or slightly different ways that they use the system. So I do want to be sure that you are correctly inputting information and putting in things that are valuable to the recruiters and others using the requisition. So based on the justification, we have the position justification comment. So again, all affiliates use this slightly different depending on the selection up here. So you do want to double check what, if any, information needs to be entered here. Same with the position number. So I do think Brigham pretty heavily uses this. So again, just double checking what, if anything, needs to be entered in this field. Non-exempt employee timekeeping method, again, neither of these are required fields, but if you do want to enter if they use Kronos Self-Service or Kronos Terminal, you can indicate that here, as well as if this is a variable or a variable shift job, you can indicate that here as well. Workgroup, again, so where there is the selector window, I do suggest using that. So again, you can see all affiliates information. So I will just sort this way. And I'll just pick this top one up here. The recruiting department, so there is this little note here. This is the department that will display on the career site. So the recruiting department is a field that we created in Taleo. And the reason we created this is because some of the departments, so this is our testing environment, so this probably isn't a real department in the PeopleSoft department table. But to that point, some of the departments are a little bit funky or they have abbreviations that candidates might not understand what they are. So we created the recruiting department, and this is what candidates see listed on the job posting as the department for the job. And they're just very simplified, very easy to understand, pretty straightforward. So I'll just do this and I'll search. So in here, I'll just take this PHH administration and I'll select that. So that, in comparison, I know this is kind of a poor comparison because it is our testing environment, but this is just much cleaner. It's very straightforward to the candidate, just trying to give the candidate a better experience and understanding a little bit better the exact department they're applying into. So you'll manually select that. The union code, so nothing is pre-populated here, but if this was a union job, the union code would automatically pre-populate here based on the job code you selected. So to that point, kind of like this field right here. So recruiter name, this is a read-only field. It would display like that if there was a union code. If not, you can just leave it be. The recruiter name, so like I did mention, this is a read-only field. This does not mean that Dawn needs to be the recruiter for this job. It's just actually a friendly reminder for hiring managers, because when you create a job, you'll see a little bit further down, you as the person creating the job will be listed as the recruiter. And as the hiring manager, you're more than likely not the recruiter for the job. So this is just a reminder you'll need to update that field to a recruiter's name. So it doesn't have to be Dawn's name. It could be the recruiter you're working with, but this is just a friendly reminder. And just kind of a side note is we do have a job aid that can show you if you consistently are working with the same recruiter and it seems tedious to need to update the recruiter field all the time, you can set a default recruiter so that when you create the requisition, it will automatically populate to that recruiter's name. So that is a side note, but just know that is an option to simplify things for you. Company name comparison. So again, this is another read-only field, and it's just a helpful field to show because I did mention in Taleo you can see all affiliates information. So this is really just from the initial screen of when you selected create a requisition where you picked the job code and the department, just double checking you picked both of your company. So the department is PHC and the job code company is also PHC. So this is an example of what it should look like. So this is correct. You would not need to make any changes. However, I will show you a little bit further down what you would do if these did not match. License requirements, again, this is similar to the union code. So let's say this was, instead of an administration job, if this was a nursing job and it required like an RN licensure or any type of licensure, based on the job code you selected, that would automatically pre-populate here. So you can just leave that be. Old PS requisition number, again, you can ignore this entirely. That was when we were transferring from PeopleSoft applicant tracking to Taleo applicant tracking, so you can just leave that alone. Group will always populate to main group for the user group, so you can leave that be. This structure section, so this is pre-populating based on what you initially selected on the first page of the department and the job code. So how I mentioned before, if the PHC and PHC for the company comparison did not match up, you would just reselect either the department or the job code, whichever was incorrect in the first place. That's where you would make those selections and update the information. And then this information right here would all update based on the new selection that you made. But in our case, everything was fine, so we'll continue scrolling. You only need to make edits here if there was something wrong. So we'll continue down. And this is where I was talking about the owner section. So as the recruiter, my name pre-populated as the recruiter. So if I'm not going to be the recruiter for the job, I can just select from the window the recruiter who is for this specific job. Again, it does not have to be Dawn, even though her name was listed on the department table for this department that we selected. It does not have to be Dawn. It can be, though, but you would just select from here to update from yourself. The hiring manager will pre-populate, again, based on the department that you selected. So you can either leave this or update. Let's say, though, the hiring manager wants to see the job, but also the department head wants to see the job and they want to see the candidates associated. What you would do is in the hiring manager assistant field, you could add the department head. So as a hiring manager in Taleo, you can only see jobs that you're associated to. The hiring manager assistant field will receive all the same notifications that a hiring manager does. So when a candidate is put in the hiring manager screen to be reviewed, step and status, they receive an email to review that candidate. So the hiring manager assistant would also see those notifications. Or if they don't necessarily need to see the notifications, or if there's multiple people that need to be added, only one person can be added here. So the remaining people that need to see the requisition can be listed here just by clicking modify. Again, this is not required, it's just an option available. Recruiters do not need to be added down here if multiple recruiters need to be seeing this job, just because recruiters can see all jobs in Taleo. It's only managers that need to be associated to the job. And this information as well can be updated and changed once the job's been created. So if you forget to add someone or additional people you're realizing need to kind of be looped in, that can also be done after the fact as well. Process. So there is this manager notes section. I'm not entirely positive how all affiliates use this field. So this again would be something to check on what information should be listed here. Just please be very wary about information you enter here. So it is tracked in Taleo, so we do want to make sure this is an appropriate information. We do want to be in compliance. We don't want any discriminatory information entered here. So again, if you're kind of wondering if something's appropriate to be listed here, maybe a phone call is a better way to express that to the recruiter rather than entering it in the system. Job information. So this section is very specific to the job. So getting into the details of employee status, schedule, and shift. So it will automatically populate to a regular full-time day job. However, again, you do have the option of the drop-downs if it's temporary, per diem, per visit, full-time, part-time, per diem, day, evening, night, rotating. So again, making this specific for the job that you're recruiting for or that you're posting. The posted shift description. So again, this would be a field that you'd want to double check exactly how you're utilizing, but we do have this note, this field is viewable on the job posting. So likely, if you had a rotating shift, you would want to specify the days or the hours or what specifically about this role is rotating and what those hours, days, everything looks like to the candidate so they know exactly what they're applying for. Excuse me. Down here, so the standard hours, I'm just going to enter 40, but again, if it was a part-time, you would just enter in the specific hours here. Target start date, again, this is not required. I typically see this entered if it's a very high need job and they need someone to start as soon as possible. The target start date will be entered here. Otherwise, I don't see it very heavily used. The cost center funding GL type will pre-populate based on the department you selected. If the employee will be paid 100% through this cost center funding, you can just skip this whole section entirely, this next earnings distribution override. However, if it's going to be split funding, so let's say, I see this a lot with research positions, so let's say 50% will be funded through this cost center, but 50% will be funded through a grant. What you would do is, even though 50% is coming from this cost center, you would need to enter this information down here and enter the 50% distribution percent down here. And then you would enter in the grant information here and do the 50%. And the reason for this is because these distribution percentages need to equal 100%. So that's why you need to re-enter this cost center down here and do the 50%. It does not need to come from this cost center. If there's two entirely or multiple different percentages in different cost centers, again, you would just list those all out in the percentage, again, needing to equal 100%. Compensation, so all of this is read-only fields. This is based off of the job code you selected, so you can scroll through here. The job description, so you can see there's something actually pre-populated here. So this is not always the case, and typically is not. However, if something pre-populates here, it means that this job code you selected has a template. So someone ahead of time went in and added this job description to that job code. You do, even though something pre-populated here, want to be sure that it is, one, accurate, and two, that it's up to date. So you do want to scroll through and double check that it's most recent information, all up to date, and that it is applicable for this job. So we'll scroll through. So it's separated out by description and qualifications. You do need information entered in both fields. So if you need to delete or add anything, feel free to do that. If you are copying and pasting into Taleo, do be a little bit cautious with using keyboard shortcuts. So either right-clicking or using the Control-V to paste anything into Taleo. What I highly suggest is copying the information from a separate source or Word doc or wherever you store your job descriptions, and then coming into Taleo and using this paste as plain text icon, which is a little clipboard with a yellow T icon. And the reason for that is if you're copying and pasting into just this box using shortcuts, it tends to freeze Taleo, and then you'll need to restart the whole creation process for the requisition. So you'll lose everything you just started. But by using this, it tends to scrape out any back-end coding. It takes out all of the formatting, so you will need to bold and bullet within Taleo, but that couple of minutes extra of just doing the formatting within Taleo saves a lot of headache of having to restart the whole process. The EEO statement, so this will also need to be on all jobs, so again, making sure this is most up to date. And we do separate the job description, external and internal. Most of the time it's the same. Sometimes affiliates choose on the internal description to take out benefits information, but where we are such a large network, sometimes it is nice to have that information included. So what's nice is if something did not pre-populate here and you took the time above to format and get the description all correct how you want it, there is this internal description copy from, and if you hover, you can see it says copy data from the external description. So you can copy everything you just entered and formatted and have it pre-populate down here for you. So again, minimizing copying and pasting, so less chances of freezing or having to restart or losing what you've already done. So once you make sure there's internal description and internal qualifications, you've successfully gone through the requisition creation process. So at this point, you'll just come up here and select Save and Close. And up here, you can see that the job is now automatically assigned a job ID number, and it's still in a draft status. So at this point, it's really up to your affiliate, the process from here. So I'll add a couple of tidbits, but then really it's focusing on your affiliate's specific process. So from here, if you are not doing approval process, you can take this job ID number and give it to the recruiter, and they can kind of proceed from there using this job ID number. Or what a lot of affiliates are doing is they're having their managers also request approval for the job. And once the job is requested for approval and approved, the recruiter can then post the job. And the way you would request approval is through the More Actions dropdown, and then you would just select Request Approval. And again, the approval process is very specific to each affiliate. So from here, so Becky and Dawn pre-populate. So typically you do not delete pre-populated approvers, but you do have the ability to add approvers and reorder them. So again, like I mentioned, once the approvers approve, so it's still pending right now, but it will be assigned to the recruiter after. So I did leave myself as the recruiter, and they can then post the job. So for today, I'll just leave it as is, how it pre-populated, and comments is required, but if you don't have any, you can just type in NA. And from here, you would select Done. So you can see that the job status will update from draft to pending to be approved. So Becky will first receive an email notification to approve, then Dawn, and then the job will come to myself as the recruiter. So again, that it would not be going to you unless you're listed specifically as an approver, because I just left myself as the recruiter. And the recruiter and the approvers will double check all the information that was entered and approve if appropriate. But again, I did walk through the whole requisition creation process, and then I did stray off a little bit onto the requesting approval, but that is really affiliate specific. So you do want to double check on that process to be sure that's what you should be doing, that's how it should be handled. And I did mention a couple other things. So we do have job aids. So if you want to add a default recruiter, or if you need help navigating, we do have a quick navigation job aid for hiring managers. We also do have a create a requisition job aid for managers, which is screenshots and kind of like tidbits of information, little tips, helpful information, things like that. Those are fairly lengthy. So there is some great information, especially if you get stuck. And we also do have the PHS ATS support at partners.org email that you can reach out to with any questions. But your hiring manager, or sorry, you are the hiring managers. The recruiter that you're working with can get all that information for you and then triage appropriately. So do not feel like you're in this alone. There's a lot of people to help with this process. So thank you very much for listening today, and definitely let me know if you have any questions. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.